Hello and welcome to Metabolic Balance ANZ Expert Panel Discussion. As the head of Metabolic Balance in Australia and New Zealand, I have often heard quite a few myths being sort of shared in both the practitioner world in Australia and New Zealand, and that some people in the consumer world also don't really fully understand what metabolic balance is about, or they have some preconceived ideas or assumptions that they've sort of leapt to. And this prompted me to really say, let's get some of our excellent practitioners who have got both the expertise, they have an independent, fully independent business and outlook, but have got that actual real life practitioner experience of using metabolic balance in practice and working with different clients, of all sorts of clients. And I'm thrilled to bits that with my invitation, we've got together a wonderful panel, and I'm delighted to introduce Aralina Issy. Hello, Aralina.
Hi, Cherry.
And you are a naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist, you've been working in naturopathy for over 20 years. Am I correct? Yeah. And you've been using metabolic balance for probably about 2 or 3 years now. Is that
coming up for my nearly into my second year of metabolic balance?
Yeah, fantastic. And we've got Karen Pike from Inspire Wellness and a nutritionist. You are one of the top practitioners in in Australia. Very wide experience of all sorts of conditions that you've used metabolic balance for. Big welcome to you, Karen.
Thank you.
We've got Katie King. Katie, hello. You're one of the first practitioners that I actually trained up in Australia back in 2017. Katie has got an awful lot of experience adapting the plan as well for athletes and exercise enthusiasts, and that real practical, down-to-earth use of metabolic balance and tweaking it for full wellness. So it's wonderful to have you here, Katie. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
And we've got Alexandra Brewster. Alexandra has an incredible experience with functional medicine, naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist. You're an ex-nurse, 30 odd years of experience, I believe, Alexandra. And you're also Institute of Functional Medicine certified graduate as well. So again, excellent expertise. Thank you, Alexandra, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Heather Musgrove as well, who is an excellent expert, a naturopath, nutritionist, Western herbal medicine, IFM certified graduate as well.
Thanks for having me, Cherry.
It's wonderful to have you all here. So I actually want to start off with the question, metabolic balance is just a fad diet. Who would like to go first in sharing this? Aralina, would you like to go first?
I'd love to jump in. I've faced this particular question quite a few times, and interestingly from practitioners more than from the general public. I think that there's a lot of assumptions that metabolic balance is some sort of a short-term fix, and there's a lot of misconception about the way that metabolic balance actually unfolds and how it has many stages and phases that you're moving through. And so a lot of people make assumptions about the initial phases being the long-term phases. And there's a lot of confusion about how the program is actually implemented very much on a one-on-one basis. And more interestingly, more misunderstood within other practitioners than misunderstood within the public, I think.
Yeah. Karen, what would you say about it, that somebody who thinks that MB is a fad?
Oh, look, I mean, it's a really interesting thing because firstly, the word diet, people go, oh, it's a diet, whereas I always say to my clients and any practitioner I come to is that the word diet, if you actually look at the true origins of it, it really is the food that we consume. So everybody in the world that eats follows a diet.
Mm-hmm.
Metabolic balance, it's really kind of getting across that it's a lifestyle change and learning of how to actually go back to eating real foods. So I think we've kind of come through this era of restrictive diets, and the kind of information that that then puts out is that, oh my gosh, someone's following a diet, it's got to be restrictive. Whereas I love what you say, Cherry, it's an abundance of good food. And that's what we're teaching people how to do, is how to actually go back to using good whole foods. And even from that practitioner community as well, I think there's this fear that there's something kind of, I don't know, like metabolic balance is magical, but something magical about it that we're doing. Whereas we're teaching the fundamentals of using food and food to change how the body works and how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And Heather, what would you what would be your thoughts on sort of how, how we're bringing metabolic balance in for clients?
Well, I think the biggest feedback I get from clients is when they're sort of at the end of their journey, or they've achieved the initial goal that they set out, is they say, this has taught me how to eat, what to eat, and when to eat. And those principles, they've had so much success with that they understand that they can carry those principles on lifelong. So they understand that, snacking really is detrimental to their long-term health, and they understand the importance of their water every day, and they understand what an adequate portion looks like for them. And because the program, I actually like the structure of the program, because I think there's no grey area in it. So because it's structured, it becomes the default, because they're doing that for, most people 12 weeks, maybe longer. Then they really start to understand, this is what breakfast, lunch and tea look like. These are the foods that make me feel better. And understanding that how to carry that forward once they're at their target. And it's like, I promote that if you do this program correctly, you can have your weekends back, because I think you can, once you're at your goal, whatever that is, whether it's better sleep, better joint pain, better anxiety, whether it is weight, hormones, you can still have some indulgences on the weekends if you're using your plan as your anchor 5 days a week. So I think that's a really helpful thing to give people right up front, is what does it look like at the other end? At the other end, this is what life's going to look like, because this is what we're all doing. We're having our MB breakfast, lunch and teas through the week, and then we're relaxing a bit on the weekends. So that's the win-win, to fit it into our Western lifestyle, where socialising is just such a massive part of everything we do. So we've got to come up with strategies to still have wellness and be able to live a life that we want to live.
That's a really good point. Alexandra, what would you, because you've got an awful lot of experience, so you've been working with clients for with in naturopathy for 30 odd years, but you only introduced metabolic balance in those last sort of 4 or 5 years. What would you say to people who say, look, I don't want to have to give rules and structure to a client?
As practitioners, I think we've all lost our way a bit when it comes to recommending nutrition, because over the years there's been different emphases on different ways of eating. And to further on what Karen said, diet actually has the root in Greek, which means way of life. Yeah. So and I'm not denigrating in any way carnivore, ketogenic, vegan, vegetarian, the palmful of protein in the snack and all that sort of stuff. And we've all been fed this over the years and over the decades. And what I really loved about metabolic balance, when you first introduced me to it, Cherry, or, those few years ago, I thought, oh, this is just so fabulous, because I absolutely agree with everybody else who's spoken. I totally agree with all those points, and I would say them myself. And the structure when you are busy is a very fabulous thing, because it gives you direction, and we've all gone, and all the patients come to us and they say, oh, but I've got to make bliss balls, or I've got to do this, I've got to do this. We've got to go back to that way of life that our great-great-grandparents ate, and that is pure, wholesome abundantness of food. And that's what I really found when I got the Metabolic Balance program into my clinic, just how people grasped it and how excited they were that they as much as there's rules, they're really simple rules, and they're rules that everyone can do and everyone can comprehend and everyone can achieve something, and they all have results because it's so bespoke.
It's almost, I often say it's more the framework that you're really putting somebody to live their day-to-day life around. But Katie, I know in your practice as well, you don't really talk too much about weight, and you prefer to go more on a how people are feeling approach to monitoring progress and things like that. How do you find that you bring in the sort of the rules and the structure of MB to those clients that may be a bit more resistant to what could be seen as another diet, that often people have maybe done multiple diets before?
Well, I was just taking some notes just because, I mean, what everyone said is just pretty much I would just say as an extension to that. I mean, first of all, when you ask this question, Jerry, I just, to be blunt, I find it difficult that people think it's a fad, because you just got to look at metabolic balance on the surface to see the quantity of research behind it. And I wouldn't call anything that's a fad. If something's a fad to me, I think, oh, well, it's not really research based, and um, it's a bit gimmicky. Whereas, I mean, you don't have to look far into MB to see the level of research and detail that is behind it. And I also think that anything that has a maintenance phase, like an entire phase devoted to helping someone maintain, is difficult to dismiss as a diet in the sense of that people think of diets as a fad or a crash diet. Yeah, I mean, we put a lot of work into helping people work out what their maintenance will look like. And I think if you look at the 8 rules, a little bit like what Alex was saying, the 8 rules aren't rocket science. They're really just basic truths that if we take all the noise in the space of nutrition away, the 8 rules are things we've probably always known and always thought maybe I should give that a go, but it's been crowded by all this other noise in that space, I suppose. But as far as, people coming to me and me not having the weight conversation too much, which is also easy because I am an online practitioner, so I don't I don't put people on the scales or anything like that. There's no issues implementing things like 8 rules or the structure, because also what Alex was saying, I think everybody's craving structure these days, and people respond to structure because we need it, because everybody is busy. So most people are grateful to have that simple, basic framework to follow day in, day out. And it is simple and basic. It isn't making bliss balls and 3 snacks and 5 serves of protein and, any magical time consuming stuff like that. It's just simple whole foods.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's often that simplicity that I see. We have a very complex, fast-paced world, and people just, sometimes it's the case of just want to be told what to do. But there is quite a big movement, or probably maybe, would you say maybe it's coming to an end, but when we say intuitive eating, a lot of people say, oh, you've got to go with intuitive eating. What would you say about that, Aralina? What would you say about that?
I think that intuitive eating is really interesting that you raise that, because I find that before metabolic balance, people's capacity for intuitive eating is low. And after metabolic balance, their capacity for intuitive eating is high. And in fact, that is in essence what metabolic balance promotes. We live in a really discombobulated world with discombobulated food, and no wonder everybody's confused. One of my clients was just recently speaking to me, and she said, I was really, really unwell. And for the first time, I knew what to eat. I just sent my housemate to the supermarket with a list of the foods that I needed, and I just ate my planned foods, and I recovered in half the time, and I didn't have this, stress and unsurety. I just ate my plan. And I think most of my clients like that will describe metabolic balance as the life hack they never knew they needed. And I think that's just backing up, what everybody else has said, that I don't even think of the rules as rules. I think of them like principles, like foundations, pillars. They're supporting you to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. And you can be intuitive as well when you follow them, I think is what I often say.
They actually uncover your body's intuitive knowledge.
Yeah. Karen, would you add to that?
Yeah, it's like I love what you were saying, and it's really interesting with intuition, because how does somebody necessarily define their intuition? How do they understand what it is? So, like, we see a lot of people, I certainly see a lot of people that go, oh, I'm still craving things. And do they then take that on as intuition? So it's like, oh, I'm craving chocolate, so therefore I just need to eat a little bit of chocolate and things like that. Whereas when I find when you go through the process with metabolic balance, that your taste buds change, you get used to different foods. And I think that intuitive eating does become a thing towards the end, because you're actually craving the foods that you know are good for you. Whereas when you start, you don't necessarily know. So I think the word intuition can be blurred with cravings for some people, because we don't always know what intuition really means.
Yeah. What would you say, Heather, that you think may be driving a lot of those in the cravings that people may be having? I mean, just from a functional medicine point of view.
Oh, I think stress is number one. Like, I think that we eat our emotions, and I know I'm definitely a stress eater. So if you look at one of those three legs of wellness in humans, which I think is, movement, exercise, diet, nutrition, stress, and sleep. So as soon as the stress is high, the cravings start, whether it's a craving for alcohol when you get home, or whether it's a craving for chocolate before you go to bed, or the savoury people that have the packet of chips and yet they've been really good all day and then they eat a whole bag of potato chips before bed. It's that not being able to differentiate intuition from stress. And and in fact, intuition comes through very, very differently. Intuition's more of that calming influence and that knowing that comes from deep within, that something's right or something's not right. But in a busy world of stress, and at the end of the day, nearly everyone's stressed. Everyone comes in stressed. So I agree that it's very difficult to actually identify intuition if you're in a stressed state, which basically takes most people out. And that's why intuition comes through so strongly in a meditative state, because you need to actually be in that meditative state to get that message loud and clear from your higher self. So I haven't actually come across people quoting intuitive eating to me, because to me that sounds like something that's very out of sync with society, because most people aren't in touch with their intuition on a day-by-day, meal-by-meal basis.
That's an excellent point. because when we get somebody truly back into the balance of what, is 3 meals a day and eating good food, hydrating the body properly, that is actually where you can actually truly see what the true signals are, and not just what, craving sugar, for example. We shouldn't be craving sugar in any kind of strong way. I mean, sugar, or any kind of high glucose food, maybe for energy, but it's not a balanced place to be having that plummeting blood sugar. So the a lot of the time, people also worry about bringing in a rule-based kind of program, or a principle framework-based program like Metabolic Balance. If there is any kind of eating disorder or disordered eating history or current situation, what would anybody share about that?
I've had a couple of people, or a few people have past disordered eating arise during Metabolic Balance, and I've worked with some people that have gone in with where we know we're working with disordered eating. And I think it comes down to the practitioner support and the way you implement it. So it's really understanding how this person's eating has become disordered, what are their triggers, what led to the disordered eating, because I think disordered eating can come from really many places, but I sort of break it into two categories. One being mental, emotional, stress-driven disordered eating, and another being nutritional disordered eating, because I find that there's a certain level of nutritional disorder that skews our eating. And so depending on what is coming up for people, I think you can actually implement Metabolic Balance in a way that heals disordered eating. And I haven't come across that many ways of helping people to bring structure to their eating so they become more in tune with the needs of their body. But it sort of takes us, in my experience thus far, I go back to the intuition around food being supported, the nutrition being improved, the metabolism working more effectively, and then the practitioner emotional support, meaning that there's actually an opportunity to heal what is like the most fundamental health milestone that anybody faces in their life, which is eating, and what you eat, when you eat, how you feel about what you eat. I think if you looked at like our general society, like huge, you actually really evaluated whether people had disordered eating or ordered eating, more people would have disordered eating than ordered eating. And having those pillars, but working with them in a way where they're not implemented as dogmatic rules, where they're actually seen as like everybody's keeps saying, like a way of living. So if I'm not going to snack, but actually have a life circumstance, which means that snacking today is actually what I need to do, then that's what you need to do. And I think that it's actually a prime way, if implemented correctly and supported correctly, it can, in certain circumstances, I've seen it really heal people's disordered eating.
I think what I'm hearing you say is what I have always believed. It's why Metabolic Balance is a practitioner-only program and a coach-led program, because that is the true. It's nothing is about just it being at face value. Okay, you've got to do anything. The practitioner is is really key to understanding where every client is at and making everything the best for them to be actually implemented. So the structure actually can be really reassuring as well for people with that who have a desire for control as well, but it also allows that place for all of the nutrients to truly start to become into balance, so that better choices can be made and more of an a response can come for every individual. So Alex, would you add to that?
Yeah, this is really an interesting comment topic, because I actually think that metabolic balance is the least nutrition by numbers thing around, because everyone goes, oh, but the rules are so and this and you've got this and this, and it's only nutrition by numbers. I've heard that from a few practitioners, and I think it's actually the least, because it's so bespoke. I recall in particular a young chap I had, he was 30s, OCD, schizophrenic. And, I'd been working with him for a long time, and we've discussed that we are going to try this program. And he was so grateful, albeit I got photos of every single meal, but that's okay. I'm German, I can deal with that. But, he was so grateful, because with his compulsions in the past, whether he'd gone keto or whatever, he was sort of so obsessed about doing the right thing but having no direction. So he was doing the same thing. Whereas with metabolic balance, it gave him the structure he needed to give him a really good metabolically balanced diet. And for that, he felt well, and he actually, it improved his schizophrenic condition out of sight. So my really only comment for that is, other than the example, is I think it is, and agreeing with Aralina, that it's who has a disordered eating pattern, who doesn't. Certainly anybody who, thinks that they can go past the drive-through of Hungry Jack's on a Friday night, as opposed to making a really good meal that is going to sing to their body, would have some modicum of disordered eating as well.
Yeah. Because that kind of brings me then nicely to the idea of variety coming into place. Because again, one of the myths, I think, because what we get with an MB plan, we get a food list that people, if your food is listed on your list, you can eat it, and if it's not listed, you can't. So then it's this idea of, restricted food lists, that's not good. But this is often the complete opposite of what we actually get. Karen, what would you say about the food list and the variety that we can bring for people?
Yeah, like with the food list, so the foods, and I'll go back to that abundance word, and I use abundance a lot with everybody I speak to. It's an abundance of the right foods to get your body back into balance. And the term I use to a lot of people when they ask about metabolic balance is, I use that it's scientific, holistic, and realistic. So when we look at the foods, we're taking that scientific approach. We've looked at the bloods, we've looked at what's actually happening within the body. We've taken into consideration the person that is in front of us, and we have given them this abundance of the right foods for them to help them heal. The other thing I say is that metabolic balance is never a list that tells you what you can't eat. It tells you what you should be eating to heal your body, to get your body into balance. And the idea is that we grow this list and we bring all whole foods back into their diet, if we are calling that their day-to-day eating. And just because a food isn't on there doesn't mean it's a bad food. There's a lot of kind of, well, I can only eat these foods because they're good foods. It's removing all of these bad foods. It's not removing bad foods. It's removing foods that could potentially push them sort of more out of balance. So the food list that's there, and it's really interesting with this food list, because I also think what metabolic balance gives you is this way to actually broaden your approach to the foods that you are eating. I certainly know when I got my first list, there was foods on there that I would never have considered eating because I was so into my day to day. And I would say I was disordered eating. I was reading what was good for me and I was eating what I was told was good for me. It absolutely wasn't. And then all of a sudden I've got this list with more fruits and more vegetables and vegetables that I didn't even know how to cook. I had to Google them myself. So it kind of broadened my horizons. And then as you move through the process with metabolic balance, the foods I eat now, like there's nothing that's restricted in my day to day other than foods that I know in this process don't work for me. So yeah, it's definitely about abundance eating from that list as opposed to restrictive eating.
Yeah, I think it's often that case of people see a food coming up on their list as well, and they're going, "Oh, gosh, I've never even thought to eat that," and then suddenly you're widening their palate, or you're challenging preconceived ideas of something they thought they didn't like, and actually suddenly they're going, "Oh my gosh, I tried that food and it's absolutely delicious." Katie, do you see that? Have you seen that over the years as well using MB?
Yeah, definitely. I think what Karen said was, spot on. When you give people a list, I don't think anyone I've ever seen has ever focused on, oh my goodness, I can't eat XYZ, or at least not for the first, strict phase when we're sort of sticking with our list. Most of the time it's sort of like, wow, that's a lot of different foods that I can put together. And then because we're guiding them through a program, you have the time as the practitioner to really help them to explore that list thoroughly over your time with them. So they generally do arrive at this point where they are eating a lot more variety than they were previously, because let's face it, most people eat the same thing for breakfast every day, take the same lunch or buy the same lunch and rotate 3 or 4 different dinners. So when we're looking at MB, we're getting this huge spectrum of nutrition. And then, as Karen alluded to, when we're moving more into a maintenance phase, ideally we would want the client to be embracing all whole foods if they can. And there may be 1 or 2 there that, or maybe a few more, that they just determine, okay, well, unfortunately, I just can't eat that because it gives me reflux every time, or I get hay fever or whatnot. But generally, we're looking at the end result is eat 3 beautiful meals a day, have protein with all of them, drink lots of water, and eat an abundance of fresh fruit, vegetables, and appropriate carbohydrates. That's what MB is, which is basic good nutrition, really.
What I also hear from that as well is that metabolic balance, we could see it as the perfect elimination style diet for an individual, that we really find that baseline of amazing food to get the change. And then we can start to broaden things out and also then identify how we truly feel when we're bringing more foods in. Heather, would you agree with that?
Yes. So I often, once people have been on the program for 8 or 10 weeks, say, what is it that you're really, really missing? Is there anything you're missing? And sometimes people say, no, I'm happy with what I've got. Or they might say, oh yeah, I really, really want to have pumpkin. Okay, well let's put pumpkin in. That's, lots of people do get pumpkin on their plan. You didn't. So, or they really miss broccoli. So bring a few things in, and then there's no issues. So, okay, your metabolism's improved, your gut health's improved. These foods aren't trigger foods. So let's start to expand with the things that you're really missing first. And then the other thing is sometimes they say, oh, look, I really want something, and then they have it, and then they don't like it. Or they get such a reaction, they're like, oh my God, I thought I really missed having whatever it is, but it didn't miss them. And so they need to see that. And because the program's been so structured, there's that opportunity to see that reaction. And like everyone said, taste buds change, and sugar addiction and alcohol addiction and carbohydrate addiction in general is often way, way less at the end. And they're not tempted to go back to those. Like, I have a lady at the moment who's doing extremely well, but at her intake, she was having 15 cans of Coke and 15 cigarettes between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. every night. I was just about comatose. I was like, oh my God, she's going to end up in the nut house when she cuts all that out. But she has done an exceptional job. So she really demonstrated to me it doesn't matter how far away from this whole food principles that we are, with the right motivation, they can do it. Because I in decades haven't had someone come in that's having that much sugar, and she's to just knock off work and just one after the other, and she's not. So yeah, it's quite amazing how your body changes and you're able to listen to those cues and not fall back into bad habits.
That's amazing. Yeah. Because Alex, I'm pretty sure we've talked as well about your personal experience of bringing in tomatoes again.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, tomatoes.
Tomatoes is good, right? They're high in lutein, they're great for your eye health. We've all got a few cataracts living in this country. My first treat meal, I made a homemade, rye-based, everything organic. I even sourced the salami free-range pizza. I made it at home. Next day, killer of a migraine. I hadn't had any migraines since I'd started on the program, and they were usually at least a weekly thing. And of course, I didn't have tomatoes, so I did, but I didn't correlate the fact that it was tomatoes. I mean, tomatoes are good for you, right? And even tomato paste, and I'd eat them like apples, and seriously. And it took me a couple of goes before I went, oh crumbs, it's actually the tomatoes. And even now, and it's the more concentrated, so tomato paste is a no-no. I might be able to have a few tomatoes, no, not cherry wills, cherry tomatoes, a couple of times a week. But if I push it, the visuals, it takes 24 hours, the visuals start. It's absolutely remarkable. And everybody you talk to, whether it's nutritionists, whether it's functional medicine people, whether it's other naturopaths, other colleagues, they just go, what? Then they all try to analyze it. Oh, is it the salicylates? And you go, well, no, it's not, because you can eat these other foods or whatever. But MB picked it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I think it's that it's just really speaks to the fact that what is a healthy food? This description of a healthy food has to be on an individual level. That's saying one man's meat is another man's poison is absolutely key, isn't it? Because what is good for me, what is healthy for me, is not going to necessarily be healthy for anybody else. Or, for you, Aralina, or you, Karen, or, it's actually, that's where MB comes in. It's that truly personalized food list, as opposed to a preference or just what some research paper of a broad spectrum of healthy individuals kind of identified some small difference in a parameter might influence. Because again, so just sort of wrapping up today's session, because I think we've really touched on some great points around the foods and using metabolic balance. Would anybody like to just sort of wrap up in their idea of what metabolic balance can give to people in giving that truly personal food list and the freedom it then gives to them?
I actually believe it gives you direction. How many of us have said today we have lost our way? There's a lot of noise. It gives every single person direction. It gives the practitioner direction. You've also here, oh, look, you're not, if you have to use MB in your practice, you're not a good nutritionist. You're not a good practitioner. You're not a good whatever. I think it's the opposite. I think if you don't use it, you are lacking as a practitioner, because it is so bespoke. And no wonder it sounds like a cult, because sometimes it's too good to be true, right? It's like everything else that promises is either MLM or a cult, and so that's what I believe, MB. I think it gives you direction in a sentence.
If those practitioners think that we're not good because we use MB, I'll put my hand up and say I'm not as smart as them, like as the MB people, because, and I always say that to my clients, I don't have that knowledge in my head. If other practitioners do, they have learned a lot more than I have, because I think the research and everything behind MB is extraordinary. But I think we're at this really interesting point in time at the moment. We have a real issue globally with, chronic health, obesity, so much that can be helped with food. And we're coming, and maybe this is back on the intuitive eating discussion, because, as you know, Cherry, I have quite a strong interest in intuitive eating as well. There's this argument that, we're not helping people with structure, we're not helping people with boundaries, we're not helping people with restriction. And hopefully with this discussion today, we've tried to, help people to understand that it's not really restriction, it's more abundance. And yes, there is structure, but it does provide boundaries that people respond to. But I would say, like, we have to do something, like, with what we're faced with at the moment from a health perspective. And from my personal and professional experience in implementing MB, it's very powerful against chronic disease, obesity, and not from a let's fix it for 3 months like everything else and then go backwards for 2 years and look for the next thing. Most people who are at that point where they know they need help come to MB and go, wow, this is working, and they stick with it for years, and they stick with you for that little bit of hand holding and support and accountability and help as well. So, I don't think we can throw away structure, because people need it, and we can't ignore the fact that people need guidance around what to eat these days. And MB, as far as I'm concerned, is the best solution for that there is.
Yeah. Aralina, what would you say on these lines?
I would say that I have seen metabolic balance really transform my own practice. I've seen it transform my own personal health. And I think that that's one really amazing part of metabolic balance, because it is completely individual. Your practitioner is speaking from their own personal experience of eating metabolically. That I actually started seeking out metabolic balance. I didn't even know it existed, but I started seeking it before I knew it existed, because what I noticed as a practitioner was that the complexity of disease that I was treating meant that I was having to use herbs for years and decades with people, and I couldn't pull back on that because they would revert to their complete dysfunction. And so I really wanted my patients to graduate from naturopathy, and metabolic balance has given them that. So people that were extremely reliant upon my herbs and taking a lot of supplementation have been able to pull back to a much, much more manageable level of supplementation, have been able to self-guide around the health and the eating. And that's meant that I've been able to help more people. So I think that as a practitioner, I find it very inspiring, and it's turned into a really powerful tool that I use.
Yeah. And Heather, just because you do have a lot of expertise as well, as in everybody here has. So if somebody says to you, well, surely you can tell me which foods I need to eat, what would, why do you use metabolic balance?
Well, like you said, we're really busy. Like, we're busy as practitioners, and my diversity of clientele is the full spectrum, from a day-old baby to a 95-year-old man, and I'm trying to be all over everything. And Metabolic Balance is a fantastic tool where I'm using the intellectual property of the program in Germany. I'm using the intellectual property of what your blood work said. And have I got time to sit down and try and nut that out for every person? And like Katie said, do I have the nuances in my head to say, oh, you know, how would I have worked out Alex was reactive to tomatoes without doing extensive elimination diets and all those sort of things? So it's an awesome tool for me to get results much, much quicker. Like Arlena said, with way less supplementation, and then empower them that they know what they can do and what they can eat and how they can feel well. So when we're time poor as practitioners, like Arlena said, we want them to get well and move on. Like I have waiting lists all the time to see new clients. So if you're keeping everyone on the drip and you're band-aiding their symptoms and they're not really getting that personal power to fix themselves with food, then you're not really doing them a great service either. And I can actually see the difference between the people that resist MB, patients, clients, and those who embrace it. And the ones who say, oh, no, I don't want to do that, they limp along. They do get better because that's what we do, and we coach and we give them a few of the rules to use loosely, but they haven't got the plan. And the ones that embrace MB and go for it off the get-go get better much quicker. So it's a win-win. It's a win for them. It's a win for us as practitioners. And it's a win for everyone that's needing less pharmacology. They're needing less supplementation. And, you know, when we haven't addressed today the cost point, people save money on Metabolic Balance without a shadow of a doubt, you know, because they're not going out for morning tea. They're not having lattes. You know, I don't know about where you guys are, but, you know, coffees are up to $6 to $7 now. If people are having 2 or 3 barista coffees a day, there's the money they're going to spend on MB, hands down, because they won't be doing that. They won't be snacking. So even economically, it's not a huge investment for the return that you get from the program.
I think that sort of just also sums up what I often see. It's the speed of results that we get. So just Karen, if you would just sum up, how quickly do you see results happening in clients?
I would say within a week, within 2 weeks. It's incredible the change that you see from when you very first see your client that comes in, and then you present their plan to them. And everyone says, how quickly is this going to work? We're in a time where we want that instant change, and how am I going to know that I feel different and things like that. And I normally see a client after I've given them the plan on about day 10 of being on their plan, and I would say it is, I'm going to go 99 to 100% of people, when they come back in at that point, are already seeing a difference. They're feeling better, their energy, their sleep. If weight is one of their goals, like, it is so fast. And it's really quite interesting with MB. So prior to bringing MB into my practice, I had studied and I was confused. I was confused with all the information that was out there, and how do I treat this person, and what do I do here, and this and that. And I wasn't feeling great in myself as well as a human. It's like I was searching for something, and I actually have to credit Katie to bringing me into MB. I knew somebody that worked with Katie and they were doing great, and I spoke to her and she said, give it a go. And I did. And I saw the results, I think, within a few days of being on my plan. So, and that's something that I was never able to get when I was trying to break through the noise as a practitioner. So yeah, I actually think days to, yeah.
I think that is actually when you with Metabolic Balance, you truly start to fully understand what the impact of food has on the human body. Before that, you kind of think it's all a bit well, is it really that big a deal? Or, but I actually say you really do understand how much food is the fuel. It seems so obvious to say food is our fuel, because it is. But then we really see how much the fuel truly impacts the human body. I am so grateful. That's been such an amazing first session of our expert panel, and I'm very excited for part two. So I think we've really covered a lot today, and a big thank you to all. And if anybody is listening and they have some questions they want to ask our expert panel, please do make sure that you get in touch. The team at metabolicbalance.com.au. Any questions, and we can cover them. Okay, thank you ever so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.